So by the time I graduated, I had done 4 different internships at
Oh,
small
wow.
company, big company, mid-sized companies. Less
Mhm.
than a year after we started the company, it got acquired.
Okay.
Kind of like a classic Silicon Valley story. And then after 3 years at Pinterest, I left and I joined Facebook, which is where I am now.
Hey, welcome back everyone. I'm Ishan Sharma, and with me today on this podcast episode is Rahul Pandey. This is episode number 2 of the podcast that we did. It was a long podcast, so I thought let me break it down into 2 videos. In today's episode, he will just be sharing his journey into the field of software development. He will be talking about how he sold his startup to Pinterest and then went on to get his job at Facebook as a senior software engineer. Currently, he's a senior software engineer, and so this would be a really great podcast if you are interested about software engineering and jobs at big tech companies. He'll just be talking about what was his experience working at Facebook and how should you maintain your health as a software engineer, what are the practices followed in the big tech companies, what other skills should you be knowing other than coding. So this would be a great episode for you to just watch. Make sure that you watch it completely. Let me know in the comment section below what do you think about it, and also make sure that you subscribe to this channel and like this video. Share this video with your friends if they are excited about computer science. And you can also take a look at his YouTube channel. Rahul has his own YouTube channel. I will be linking it in the description. But yeah, with that said, now let's get started with today's video. Now let's talk about your career after you got out of your masters in Stanford. So what was your first dev job? Like you've talked about, you started your startup with your professor. Tell me a little bit about that.
From when I joined Stanford up until I graduated, I was actually very keen on, let me figure out if what I know right now can actually add value to a company. And so starting from my very first year, I started doing an internship with a local startup. There's so many startups in the Bay Area in
Yeah.
Silicon Valley, so it was actually pretty easy for me to kind of land that internship. So by the time I graduated, I had done 4 different internships at
Oh,
small
wow.
company, big company, mid-sized companies. And so when I made the decision to join my professor's startup in 2014, I was pretty well aware that here's what I liked, here's what I didn't like. And my first dev job ended up being basically this 3-person company, of which I was the founding engineer. And so the way I landed it is kind of unique in the sense that I was part of this lab for a whole year, and the work that we did in that lab turned into the startup. But that was kind of the genesis of how I landed that first development job.
And then what happened after that?
Right. And then that's a very interesting story. So after I joined that company, we were operating for about eight months. So not that long. Less than a year after we started the company, it got acquired.
Okay.
Kind of like a classic Silicon Valley story. So
Yeah.
company Pinterest, which is in San Francisco, acquired the company. And so the 7 of us who were at the startup all got acquired and joined Pinterest. And so I
Did you
ended
have
up
some
working at
funding before
Pinterest.
that time?
Yeah, so we had seed funding.
Okay.
So we had like enough money to kind of keep us alive for a
And
year
you
or
had
two.
users as well, right?
At that point, we actually hadn't had a live product yet.
Okay.
So basically, we were building a recommendation system that we could use to sell to e-commerce companies and improve the recommendation click-through rate.
Okay.
And at that point, we were basically, so our customers were enterprises and e-commerce companies. And so at that point, we actually hadn't had any customers. And so when Pinterest acquired us, it was purely based on kind of the talent acquisition. So the idea was that the people here are talented. They are working on something that's really critical to our business as well. So let's just take the people and let's have them work on our business instead of their own business. So that actually happens a lot in Silicon Valley, where it's a good deal for the company because they're able to acquire a bunch of talented engineers together rather than having to recruit them one by one.
Yeah.
And it's a good deal for the company because now it's much less risk to join a bigger company like Pinterest. And then you don't have to worry about the sales and marketing and all the other things that are involved in creating a successful startup. And so I was at Pinterest for about 3 years. And that was where I started doing Android development. And I moved away from machine learning and data science and into Android engineering, which is a pretty interesting transition. And then after 3 years at Pinterest, I left and I joined Facebook, which is where I am now. And I'm doing Android engineering at Facebook for more than 3 years now.
All right. One question that I had is, Is FAANG overrated? Like the top tech companies around the world, are they overhyped? Like by like I see like a lot of people on LinkedIn and other places, and they're just like hungry to get into these companies, get a job as a
Right.
software developer. Like not in the literal sense, but literally they just really want to get in. And I have my own college students, and all they dream of is getting into the top tech companies. What do you think about it after working at those places for such a long time?
I would say FAANG isn't overhyped. There is certainly, like you mentioned, a lot of people who want to get into FAANG, but there's a good reason for that. And I think there's actually three reasons that I'll talk about. One is that it's a stamp of approval. Once you get into FAANG, landing your next job becomes much, much easier because everyone in the industry knows that the FAANG hiring bar is of a certain standard. So they know that you're competent. The second reason is the mentoring and the management that's in place at FAANG. So a large part of how managers are assessed and how they succeed is how happy are the engineers on their team. And so I didn't realize this before I joined FAANG, but my manager's job is to help me and help me grow. And that's a really powerful thing that, you have someone out there who's advocating for you, giving you feedback and coaching you. So I think that's something that you don't typically find at a startup or maybe a non-FAANG company, which doesn't have a well-defined process for helping you get promoted and grow. And the third thing is purely financial, which is that I think working at FAANG, my experience after having interviewed at a bunch of companies is that FAANG will pay about 30 to 50% higher than a startup because they'll
Yeah.
have base salary,
Mhm.
stock options, and they'll have like a yearly bonus. So I think if you put all that together, it's actually very, very hard to compete with FAANG in terms of the financial aspect. So I feel
Yeah,
like
yeah.
those are three really powerful reasons why FAANG does have all this hype and it's deserved in many ways.
Mhm. All right. As you're talking about skills, what are the skills other than coding that are required to progress in your career as a software developer? Because I think that's something that not many people focus on. They only just keep coding, coding, coding. What
Yeah.
do you think about this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I feel like the biggest thing I can say here is communication.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
that, of course, you have to have the kind of technical groundwork of being able to build an app and code and program. But
Mhm.
beyond that, there's so much importance in being able to communicate clearly as an engineer. And communicate clearly, uh, what I mean by that is when you write an email, is it very clear to you and to everyone who receives the email what was the summary of the meeting and what is the next step and who is responsible for the next step? If that is really clear to everyone in both your written communication and verbal communication, that goes a really long way in making you responsible and taking ownership. And when you have ownership over something, that's how you can grow your career a lot faster. So I feel like
Mhm.
communication is probably the most undervalued thing from the engineering standpoint.
All right, we're going to jump a little to a different topic, and that is what was your interview preparation like? You've already worked at Pinterest, so you have some experience. But what do you think should a person who is getting into their first job, preparing for these jobs, what should be their interview preparation be like? Should they really be focusing a lot on cognitive coding? Because here in India, I think we have a lot more applicants, people who want to get in. So naturally, the companies tend to increase the bar, and they have difficult problems. That might not be the same case with US. So yeah, let me know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, so certainly I think that the story in India is definitely quite different, and I feel like like from my perspective, it feels more competitive.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say that here, let me tell you my experience. There were three main components to my interview prep. One was data structure and algorithm, which I think is similar to what you're describing, and I know that
Yeah.
you're pretty involved in that
Mhm.
in that scene. So I think the fundamental, the baseline knowledge is every day I would do like 1 hour of data structure and algorithm preparation, and that was core. The next part was being able to talk eloquently about what you've done in the past. And what I mean by that is being able to take a project that you've implemented either in a previous company or a side project and being able to talk about what was a technical challenge in that project. Why did you pick that project to implement? What were the alternatives you considered? So for example, if I have an Android app that I published, talk about why did I build that app? Did I consider React Native versus doing pure Android development? And what were the actual technical challenges that I faced in building that? And that way you can really talk about you can show to the interviewer that here's why I'm a good candidate because I've already thought through these engineering problems on my own. And the third component is being able to ask good questions about the company. And what I mean by good questions is questions which have more depth than just a yes or no answer or like a short answer. So, for example, how many employees are on your team is not a good question. A better question would be, how do you make the trade-off between building out new features in your app versus paying down tech debt? So that's the kind of a question that I think is much more insightful because there's no right answer. It's kind of a cultural thing based on how quickly the people want to move on that project and how much you want to pay down tech debt. So those are kind of the three main components of my interview prep. It was data structure and algorithm, talking about past experience, and having good questions that are relevant to the company.
All right. You've worked at your startup as well as working at Facebook. So, what were the pros and cons of working at a startup and at a big company? Because many people just think about should they go and work at a smaller company wherein they would have more impact, or should they work at a bigger company wherein they would have that tag that they can carry forward into their career?
A safer choice and maybe a better choice if you're not sure. So if you're in doubt, I would say try and aim for a bigger company. And the way I think about it is a bigger company has that infrastructure in place to help you grow. And it'll give you focus to really take one problem and go deep in that problem and learn from people around you. So if you're the kind of person who learns by watching other people and get mentoring, then a bigger company is for you. If you're the kind of person who does better by actually doing things and messing up and fixing things, then maybe a startup is better. The thing with the startup is that you're going to have less support. You're going to have less people to learn from because it's just a much smaller company. And you're also going to have to worry about a lot of non-engineering things. So rather than just having to write the code, you also have to think about, okay, how do I get the next customer? How do I think about marketing? How do I think about all these other operational things, which at a FAANG, you probably don't have to think about at all. So I feel like there's a lot of, the answer depends on where you are in your career and what kind of person you are. If you're the kind of person who learns by osmosis and you learn from people around you, then a big company is better. If you're the kind of person who learns by doing, a startup is better. And that will change over time, right? If you're a new grad and you're just out of college, then probably it's better to learn by watching other people who have done it for many years. If you're maybe later on in your career and you feel like you have enough confidence to do everything on your own, then maybe a startup is better. So it kind of really depends on where you are and what is your risk profile.
I think that no one really talks about health as a software developer. I feel that even when I'm learning to code, I just spend like hours on end just sitting at one place. And that can have detrimental effects on one's health over a long period of time. So, you've worked at tech for quite a long time. So what has your thinking been about health, and what measures do you take to make sure that you are having like a sound mind and sound body as well?
This is a very important question just because if you're not healthy, then nothing else really matters, right? Like no matter how good your career is going, if you're not healthy or if your body is hurting, your arms are hurting, like no amount of money can fix that. So I feel like it's really important. I don't do anything very special. There are two main things. One is I always try and get 8 hours of sleep or more. I'm very big on making sure I sleep for enough time that I feel well rested. If I don't sleep enough, I have a hard time doing anything productive, which requires focus, like coding. So that's one big thing. And the other thing is going back to like what started at Stanford. I played a bunch of sports. I played tennis, I played soccer, I played Frisbee. Every week I try and at least for 2 days a week or 3 days a week, I'll go out and I'll run or I'll play tennis or I'll grab a friend and we'll play soccer. So I feel like those two things have helped me to not have any issues so far and hopefully it stays that way.
I too like running, and I take up badminton a lot when I was in college. Right now, I'm just at my home, so I try to run as much as possible. But yeah, that's what I'm doing to make sure that I'm healthy. All
Yeah,
right.
I feel like having some outlet aside from just being at your computer is so important. So whether it's badminton or running or something,
Yeah,
it's really valuable to have that.
totally true. What was your typical day at Facebook or at any big company? Because I think many people just think about that. So tell me a little bit about that. What do you do usually? Do you have like a usual day, or every single day is unique? Do you get to do your work from home and you can be like, I'll get the work done, I don't want to come into the office? What are the flexibilities that are available at these companies?
Right. I would say that each day is a little bit different. There's not really a standard schedule. like depending on when you have your team meeting, when you have a certain one-on-one with different people. So it's not really a standard day. And the other thing is that it's very flexible. So like your point about like, can you work from home? Can you decide to leave at lunchtime one day and just say, okay, I'm going to pick up everything at home. So that's 100% possible. One of the nice things about software engineering is that you don't have to be in the office, right? Mm-hmm. So you can kind of, as long as you have a good internet connection and a good setup at home, then you can kind of do your work from anywhere. So my typical day is I'll have like at least 2 or 3 meetings per day for maybe an hour, hour and a half. And then I always try and allocate at least 2 or 3 hours of time where I have no meetings. And I actually turn off notifications. I turn off anything that can disturb me. Mm-hmm. And the idea there is that I really want to allocate a couple hours every day where I can focus. And that's where I can do coding, because coding and programming requires a bunch of context, and fitting that context into my head requires 30 minutes. And so if I only have 30 minutes or 45 minutes of free time, I'm not going to get anything done, because just fitting all of that code and all the different class hierarchies and relationships into my head takes some time. So I always try and have a minimum 2-hour block where I can really get a meaningful amount of code written.
All right. You started your own YouTube channel recently. Tell me, what was your motivation for that, and what are your plans with it?
Right. So my YouTube channel, we can link it in the description if people are interested. Mm-hmm. But it's basically it's focused on how people have arrived here in Silicon Valley, and also giving people practical tools and tips to do development. And in particular, what I know the most about is Android development, because that's what I do in my day job. So I make a lot of videos about Android development. And my motivation really came down to, I felt like when I looked on YouTube, or I looked at some of the courses available on Udemy about Android development, I knew that I could probably offer something which was better. And I could also make it free, because I have the luxury of having this day job. So I really just want to make this content available for everyone. I want to make it high quality. I want to make it free. So that was really the motivation to start the channel. And then after I had done the Android programming for a while, I also started interviewing my friends, because I think there's so many people out there who want to come to Silicon Valley. And living here and being here, I feel like, it's not that hard. As long as you know the right people, or as long as you know the right skills, it's not that hard. So I've also been, similar to what you're doing, which I think is great, I've been interviewing a lot of people to talk about how did they find their way from India or Korea or any other part of the world to Silicon Valley, and what are they doing now? So a lot of my channel is interviewing people like that.
Awesome. For sure, I'll be linking your channel in the description for anyone who is curious, so they can take a look at that. But now, tell me, what would be one last message that you would give to someone who is entering college, or who is already in first or second year of college and is passionate about coding and wants to get into this as their own career? What would be your last message to them?
Yeah, I would say there are 2 pieces of advice I would give. One is avoid decision paralysis. There are so many students that I've talked to who just get stuck before they even begin. And they are spending days or even weeks Googling for, okay, should I learn Angular or React or another JavaScript framework? They get stuck there, or they'll figure, okay, should I learn iOS or Android development? And I think my main message here is that it's way better to just get started, even if it's the wrong answer. Even if you figure out a month from now that I picked the wrong platform, I picked the wrong language, just start doing something now, and you're going to learn a lot more just by building something and messing up, and then you're going to figure out the right answer later on. So that's one thing. And the second thing I'd recommend is just do a small amount of work every day. It's way better for like data structures and algorithms, which is the core of every interview. It's way better to do maybe half an hour every day compared to doing 20 hours over 2 days in a weekend. So if you have the ability, just be consistent about every day doing a little bit of practice. So those 2 things, I think, are the main pieces of feedback I would give to most students who watch my channel, or maybe your channel.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me here. And I hope the audience was able to learn a lot from this. Guys, you can reach out to him on his socials. I will link it in the description as well. And Rahul, it was amazing talking to you. And I hope the audience was able to learn a lot from this. Guys, let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. If you have any questions, you can also just put it in the comments, and we will be sure to answer them.
Thanks a lot, Ishan, for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. So yeah guys, that was the episode. Let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. I've just been really busy with my exams, so I'm not really putting out a lot of content. But yeah, I hope that you are enjoying these podcast episodes, and I will continue to make more of these. Make sure that you share this video with your friends. That would be really helpful to me. And I will be doing some more giveaways. We've been seeing some amazing growth on this channel. And also make sure that you like this video and subscribe to this channel and all of that stuff. But now I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye.